I just want to say thank you all for coming and joining us on this cold evening. No matter where you are, I assume it's cold. You're all in the northern hemisphere. Okay, so believe it or not, we're in Parsha Bo. We are in chapter 12. We're going to deal with verse 2 that the Kliyakar brings down, but it's appropriate to read the verse before as well as the following verse. Hashem said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt. This is very significant. The Omer Hashem el Moshe, the El Aharon be'eretz Mitzrayim lemor. And what did he say? HaChodesh hazeh lechem, Rosh Chadashim, Rishon hu lechem lechachi hashana. This verse is broken into at least two portions that we can see. This month shall be for you the beginning of the months. Now, that's not really the way to read it. It shall be for you the first of the months of the year. So what we're going to find is that we're actually dealing with what actually is Rosh Chodesh. This month, or this sign, shall be for you the beginning of the months. Okay, so that's how we're going to read it. And this month is going to be the first month of the calendar year. At least one of the calendars that we follow, because there are more than one New Year's in the Jewish calendar, as you guys have figured out by now. In fact, in less than 2 weeks' time, it's going to be the New Year's for the trees. And I know that, at least in America, Northern Hemisphere, I assume, maybe it's also the Southern Hemisphere, I could be wrong, that the school year begins in September. And then this tax year begins, I guess, January 1st, but I know there's a significant date called April 15th. I guess that's the finishing of the tax season. And hopefully that's when you'll start to receive your tax refunds. But anyway, there are different, landmarks along the calendar year. In fact, we even use two different calendars. I mean, we have a solar lunar calendar, but we either begin on the first month, which is Nisan, but there's a significant seventh month, which we call Rosh Hashanah, and we have to deal with that as well. Hopefully tonight we will discuss part of that. Now, in order to give some background, I want to go all the way to the beginning of Genesis, Genesis 1. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, where the verse says, Bereshit bar Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, in the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth, ... So Rashi brings down a very interesting question. Questions are very good, right, Heather? Questions. Okay. So he doesn't pose it exactly as a question, but he quotes a Rebbe Yitzchak. Some say it was actually his father, stating, if you look in the source sheet number 1, it was not necessary to begin the Torah except from our verse, chapter 12, verse 2, in Exodus. This month is to you, right? The first months of the... Anyway, why does he bring this down? Because the word Torah means instructions, because the word Torah, which is based on the word or, to enlighten, to guide, right? Isn't that what light is used for? To guide you and to show you the path? So that's what Torah is. Torah or. Torah is the light and its instructions. Or, if you want to get down and dirty, it means commandments or a guidebook. It's going to tell you what you need to do. So Rashi gets right to the point on the first Rashi of the whole Torah. Why are we starting with creation, basically? If you're telling me the word Torah is instructions, so it would make sense that the first commandment that the Jewish people received as a nation would be the first. That's how you open the book. In other words, cut out, right? I'm not going to do it, but imagine just cut out all this and start with the verse we're on in chapter 12. I'll read Rashi again. Rav Isaac said it was not necessary to begin the Torah except from our verse, "This month is to you the first of the months," which is the first commandment the Israelites were commanded, right? For the main purpose of Torah is its commandments, correct? And all those several commandments we do find in Genesis, such as circumcision, the prohibition of eating the gid hanasha, the thigh sinu, they could have been included later on because many of them are repeated. Now, for what reason? This is the question. So why did God start with Bereshit Bara Elokim in the beginning, right? You got all these chapters in Genesis. What is it all for? So he begins by answering because of a certain verse in Psalms 111:6. The strength of his works he related to his people, to give them the inheritance of the nations. Now, if I would ask any historian, right, anybody, what is considered the most, I'm going to use the word coveted, what is the most desirous piece of land for all of history, for all the armies and for all the kings? It seems to be the place I'm sitting in right now called Jerusalem and therefore Israel. So many wars either have been fought over or have used the land as like a channel to get to where they needed to go. It's right in the center of the three major continents that all connect to each other, that being Asia, Africa, and Europe. And so this is the inheritance of the nations. This is what people want. But you know what? The strength of Hashem, the strength of his works, he related to his people to give them the inheritance of the nations. We're talking about the Torah being given to us, but ultimately it's for the sake of us living here, dwelling here, and fulfilling our mission here. Now this is what I would call very prophetic. Prophetic in the sense that 900 years ago, Rashi writes this down, and I don't think many people ever thought, at least 99% of the world population ever thought, that the Jews were going to return to the land of Israel. So he writes, "For if the nations of the world would ever say in the future, 'You are robbers, you are thieves, you conquered the land by force,' right? You conquered by force the lands of the 7 nations of Canaan. Let's, for all practical purposes, call a spade a spade. Today they say we stole the land from the Palestinians." And the Jews should reply, this is what the reply shall be. Hear this, world, that the entire earth belongs to Hashem. In other words, this is the answer why you need Genesis. Why you need to know that God created the world. Okay, the entire earth belongs to Hashem, the Holy One, blessed be He. He did create the world. From this we learn the story of creation, meaning Genesis. And He gave that land to whomever He wanted. And who did He want to give it to? I'll tell you. He wanted to give it to the 7 Canaanite nations. You're shocked. Yes, He wanted to give it to them, and then He wanted to take it away from them and give it to the Jewish people. We're not going to deny history. We're not rewriting history. We're telling it like it is. God gave it to them, whomever He desired, whoever He deemed proper, when He wished. Yes, He gave it to them. And according to His wish, He took it away from them and gave it to us. I met an Arab once, very seemingly religious Muslim, and he told me he believes in the God of Israel. And I said, "Why? I thought you were a Muslim." He said, "I am. I believe in Allah, but He's the same God, and He loves the Jewish people. And I'll tell you why," he said, "because you Jews, you brought down the Soviet Union. Nobody can bring down the Soviet Union, but I don't know where he came up with this idea. But you guys protested in the streets, and you broke the Iron Curtain. And then you already knew about the 48 war, but he's talking about the 67 war, and and on, that you fought against 7 Arab nations and won. So whoever God decides is the winner of the war, that's it. It belongs to you. So God gave it to you. So even a non-Jew can certainly come to the understanding that we just expressed. Now we're going to deal with our verse again. What does it mean that HaChodesh Hazeh Lechem? Notice that the verse has 2 times the word Lechem. And I already mentioned that there seem to be two parts of this verse. HaChodesh Hazel Lechem Rosh Chodeshim. What is Rosh Chodesh? Don't look at the translation. Look at the Hebrew. HaChodesh Hazeh. This renewal shall be for you Rosh Chodesh. That's not just now, but forevermore. Every time you see this, whenever the word Hazeh is used, we're going to find out that it's as if God pointed with his finger and showed a picture of what this is. Moses had a hard time understanding what a new moon looked like. And God, Kaviyachol, as if he pointed with his own finger and said, here it is, this is what it looks like. So now look at HaChodesh Hazeh, this renewal for you shall be what we call a new moon. And Lechem, we're going to find out, is plural. If you don't know Hebrew, learn it. Lechem, it's not lacha or lacha, it's Lechem. So who's Lechem referring to? And who's the second Lechem referring to? And what is the second part of the verse referring to? We're going to find out. Buckle up, put on your seatbelts. The clear card begins by telling us that Hashem showed, the Holy One Blessed showed Moses with his finger, so to speak, what a new moon looks like. By saying it like this, Kazer Re'eh the Kadesh, when you see this, this is what you sanctify. Al Ken Amar Techila, that's why it begins by saying HaChodesh Hazeh, HaChodesh Hazeh. Don't read it as this month, but HaChidush Hazeh, this new, the renewal, this new moon. This is what I'm showing you. Yihyeh Lechem Rosh Chodeshim, shall be for you Rosh Chodesh. Not just this month, but every month thereafter. Shekol Pam, every time. Shetei Ro'eh Chidush Halavana B'tmuna Zu. Every single time that you see this renewal of the moon, in this exact form, in the picture I'm showing you, Az Yelechem Rosh Chodeshim, that will be for you a new month, but it's plural, new months, B'kol Chad Shana, each month of the year. This is for you the first day of each month of the different months that are going to fall out during the year. And then afterwards, V'yachar shenatan siman yidua el hayamim shakol Chad Shana lasotom roshim lekol yemei chodesh achreihem. After I showed you the sign where you will then know throughout the year, each new moon, each month has a first day, right? A new moon. So every month that follows, you're going to do the same thing. But I'm telling you right now about the klala kol chodesh. But now I'm telling you about the entire month that we just sanctified, called Nisan. That's where the next verse comes in, the next part of the first verse, of the verse we're dealing with. Rishon hu lechem lechad shana. This month, Nisan, will be for you the first month of this, we'll call it a calendar year. We're not referring to our Rosh Hashanah the way we keep the calendar, which is a very, well, we're going to get into it, so buckle up. But he's telling you right now, this will be, in terms of counting, your first month of the year. La'asos kol chodesh on Nisan. You're going to establish the entire month of Nisan as Rishon l'kol shar Chadshei Shana, as the first of all the months of the year. Okay, when it comes to months, you start, and we count Nisan as the first month, and every month thereafter. That's how we count. That's what we do. In fact, I'll tell you a law that a lot of people don't know. Many people write out the word January, February, March. It's actually more proper. Yes, they are names of who knows, right? And even the Jewish people brought up the Babylonian names of the months, and we use those months. But it's better to use those months than to use the number system, right? Imagine writing your check and you write January 1st, you write 1 or 01 2019. That's inappropriate. We don't do that. If you're going to write out the months by numbers, then you must use the system of Nisan. That's how God commanded it to be. That's why we celebrate Rosh Hashanah in what is known as the 7th month. It's not called the 1st month. Okay, it's the 7th month. Okay, we'll get into that. Hold your horses, hold your horses. But it seems inappropriate to write out the numbers of the months by using January as the 1st month. It's better to write the word January in full than to write 01, whatever. Okay. Then the Kliyakar begins to dissect the idea that it did say lechem twice in that first, in our sentence, 2 different parts. We described it as 2 different parts. So he says like this, v'naka lechem lechem shtei pamim. It's written lechem twice. It's a question, why should it be like that? Lefisha lechem rishon, I'll tell you why. The first lechem that's used is medaber b'kiddush chodesh. It's actually referring to how to sanctify the new moon. It shall be for you, plural. What does that mean? She'eno nimsar ki'im lebeis din. I don't know how these other people who just, like maybe the Sadducees, the Karaites, the Messianic Christian movement, I don't know what they think this verse is referring to, that you just go out and look. But we have the authority of Moses, and he told us this is what it means, that it's through the Beit Din. It's through going up and sending witnesses to Jerusalem. Yes, you need 2 witnesses. And it's referring to the previous verse, which says what? Hashem said to Moses and Aaron, you need 2 people. You need 2 witnesses to go to the Beit Din. The Beit Din is plural. And it's not just one person making up their own calendar. Okay, one of the most severe, I'm going to use the word punishment and crimes and sins for a non-Jew, is to make their own religion. You want to know what the Torah means? Go find out from the Jewish people who have the holy chain of tradition. And this is the authority of the Beis Din, the authority of the Jewish court to sanctify the new moons. And as the Kliyakar says, Lechem is referring to Moshe and Aaron that was mentioned in the previous verse. Now what about the second Lechem? Right? Rishon hu Lechem lechad shehashana. Now this is very going to get a little bit awkward because it's going to go a little bit against many of the things we learn. Lahar sha'olam nivra b'tishrei. Now there is an argument in our tradition. When was the world created? Was the world created? When I say the world, I really mean mankind, because if the world was created in Nisan, according to Rabbi Yeshua, so we're talking about man was created on the 1st of Nisan, and the 5 previous days, we're talking about the world was created, right? The world took 6 days to create, and God rested on the 7th day. So, or it's Rosh Hashanah in Tishrei. So there's a major discussion. And Tosfos actually brings a solution that is not really an argument, it's just a different perspective. There's a thing called a conception and a thing called a birth, right? There's when God thought of creating the world and when God actually created the world. So when he thought of creating the world, it was through just justice and din and harsh judgment, and he saw that the world would never be able to survive. When he actually did create the world, he created it with mercy. Okay. So there's a concept called conception, a concept called birth. We're not going to get into which one is which at the moment because that's how we do see our 2 different calendars. But if you go to number 3 on the source sheet, there is a Talmud in Rosh Hashanah 10b that discusses Rabbi Eliezer holds that it is in Tishrei, and that's what we're going to deal with, okay? That in Tishrei, the 7th month, the world was actually created, and our forefathers were born and died, according to Rabbi Eliezer. On Pesach, Yitzchak was born. On Rosh Hashanah, Sarah, Rachel, and Chana were designated to give birth. Yosef was released from prison in Tishrei, and the slavery in Egypt ceased. So 6 months before we were released. However, in Nisan, everyone agrees we were redeemed from Egypt. That's going to be consistent in the next paragraph as well. But the argument is, what about the future redemption? So, according to Rabbi Elazar, not only was the world created in Tishrei, but the final redemption will be in Tishrei. On the other hand, Rabbi Yeshua says it was actually in Nisan that the world was created, and our forefathers were born and died. According to him, Yitzhak was born on Pesach, not in Tishrei, but in Nisan. Okay, there's no argument. On Rosh Hashanah, Sarah, Rachel, and Hannah were designated to give birth, and that Yosef was released from prison, and the slavery of Egypt stopped 6 months before we were released. And everyone agrees, in Nisan we were redeemed from Egypt. But what about the argument? It still pursues. In Nisan, not only was the world created, but the future redemption would be in Nisan, just like it was then, so it will be in the future. It's something very interesting about prophecy, that it's somewhat fluid. In other words, if someone said to you, if somebody made a prophecy and it didn't come true, are they considered a false prophet? And most people I ask this question to say yes. But I dare tell you right now that you're wrong. You know what? If a positive prophecy is told, that this is the way it's going to be and it doesn't come true, you're right. He's a false prophet. But if he says a negative prophecy, and what is the point of the prophecies? Really, truly, either to confirm that he is a prophet, which would be the positive prophecies, or the negative prophecies was in order to warn the people to get their act together, to change their ways, repent. And if they repented, the negative prophecy would not have to come true. Now there's a verse that talks about the end of days. It's called, in Isaiah, Achishena B'ito, that it will come hastily in its time. So what does it mean, hastily in its time? Hastily means quickly, way before its time. And in its time means, as I guess a default. If it didn't happen earlier, it would definitely happen by then. So we say B'ito means the year 6000. And Achishena means any moment, any moment. Okay? So there is this constant fluidity, if that's a word, of are we going to deserve it? Are we going to bring it on sooner? If all the Jews would keep Shabbos, 2 Shabbases in a row, Mashiach would come immediately. There's so many other ways we can bring Mashiach. So that's just one of them. And if we fail, so then he will come, B'ito. And maybe that's also this Maklokes. B'ito, in its time, in the year 6000, or sooner, with mercy. Okay, so we're not going to go too much into that right now. We're going to go back into the text. So according to this opinion, assuming we're going with Rabbi Eliezer for the moment, that the world was created in Tishrei. According to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, that's why it says, Lechem, you Jews, you must keep the 1st of Nisan as the beginning of we'll call it the calendar year for practical sake. It's not Rosh Hashanah, but it's at the beginning of the years of kings, let's say, for documents. Why Lechem? Lechem means to you, the Jewish people. Shekol ha'umos roish yimnu min Tishrei. That really, because Rabbi Eliezer says the world was created in Tishrei, which is, let's say, September, right? Around then. So the Goyim, the non-Jews, the nations of the world, when they count, they shouldn't be counting from January. They're counting according to January because of their misunderstandings of prophecies and the Tanakh, and their assumption that they have another, some kind of idol of a Lord and a Savior who's a man who was born and maybe circumcised around that time. Sad to say, they should be keeping Rosh Hashanah, they should be celebrating in Tishrei. Reshit Hashanah, that's the beginning of the year. Avalachem, but you Jewish people, Alavad, you alone, I want you, it's fitting for you to count from Nisan. Now why? It's not going to be Rosh Hashanah. I mean, our Rosh Hashanah is specifically said in the Torah. It's the festival of the shofar blasts. It's a day of judgment. That's going to be clear why we keep, and it's a festival. 1st of Nisan is not a festival per se, but it's a Rosh Chodesh, and we count our months throughout the year according to the month of Nisan, Kedei, in order. In order that we have the commemoration, the remembrance, the mindset that leaving Egypt should always be in the forefront of our minds. Okay, it's not just leaving Egypt and all the mercy, but also the revelation that came thereafter. But the leaving of Egypt, the salvation, this is something that we should be cognizant of all through the year, not just on the night of Pesach. Like Kamo Harvey Mitzvah Shabbat Torah. How many, so many of our mitzvahs are contingent on remembering that we left Egypt. I mean, I'll just give you a few. Every night we say Kiddush. Every Friday night on Shabbat, right? Zeichel Yisiyatz Mitzrayim. But Shabbos itself, in the fourth of the 10 Commandments. I'm sorry, but that's in the second set. Okay, that you were slaves in Egypt, and I freed you, and now you have freedom. So that's why you should keep Shabbat. Okay, in the first set, the fourth commandment is keeping Shabbos because I created the world, which is going to be significant. And we'll talk about that shortly. So we're supposed to not just think of the first month because of the leaving of Egypt, but so many mitzvahs, so many of the ways we connect to Hashem is by remembering the kindness and the mercy and the salvations that He provided for us. So right away, the Kli Yakar brings in a verse from the first set, the fourth commandment, the first set of 10 commandments, the fourth one in chapter 20 of Exodus, verse 8. Zachor et Yom HaShabbos likadasho. Remember the holy Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath and sanctify it. Now, what is the word Zachor? Zachor means remember, commemorate, verbalize, say it. So guess what? Every single day of the week, after we pray, we determine today is the first day of the week. But it sounds strange in English. It's the first day of the Shabbat. The word for week is Shabbat. All week long we think about Shabbat. Okay, there's a Gemara that talks about when you should buy food for Shabbat. That immediately on Sunday, when you go shopping, buy the best food. According to Shammai, we don't paskin like this. The halachic ruling is not like this, but Hillel says, halavai, we should do this. And Hillel argues, but he says, Shammai says, you find something really nice, buy it and save it for Shabbat. You can imagine back then, we don't have refrigeration, or even if we did, who says it's going to last? If you find something on Monday or Tuesday that's even better, buy that for Shabbat and eat what you bought the previous day. Hillel says, well, I think that's asking too much. We're not on that level. So wait till Thursday, Friday morning, and go out and buy what you need for Shabbat. But he said, halavai, we should be on that level. He agreed. It's not like an outright argument in halacha. Okay, so Hillel says that really is the best way. But we're not on that level of emunah, of faith. But we do, it says, Shirui lanu limnos kol yamim. It's actually fitting through the Zachor as Yom HaShabbos l'kadasho to remember the Shabbos day, to sanctify it every single day of the week. Kedei sheyom HaShabbos tamid l'zikron b'neineinu. The same idea of the months. In order that the days of the week, the day of Shabbat, should constantly be in our minds. Why? Because it reminds us that there's a creator. Right? If we have, like we said, Shabbat is because God created the world in 6 days and ceased. If that is constantly on our mind, in our DNA, in our every movement, that we owe the creator everything. He doesn't owe us anything. We owe everything to him, all the thanks. And just to wonder about the creation. Let our minds wander about the beautiful creation. But that this teaches us about the fact that there is what we'll call ex nihilo. I don't like that phraseology. In English we say something from nothing. As we well know, that nothing is not nothing, but it's Ein Sof. There was a creation of substance from energy. Energy is not nothing, but it's not tangible, so we call it nothing. So we'll stick to the words we know. The idea of ex nihilo, ki achidush, this idea of creating something from nothing, is moithet al michadsho. It's the proof that there is a creator. The fact that, I don't know when it was, but the Greek philosophers always believed that the universe always existed. There was no creation. What you see around you always was. And it was only maybe less than 200-300 years ago that the modern scientists have realized it's probably true. There probably was a creation. And whether it's the Big Bang, the theory, or the law, or whatever theories they have today, that there was a creation, they claim, I'm saying the scientists make the claim that the world is about 14 billion years old. We say that man was created 6,000 years ago. We know that there was 6 days, right, in the creation. There were 5 days prior to man's coming along. And if you watch the video from Gerald Schroeder, Dr. Gerald Schroeder, he'll tell you how, or explain to you, if you have the mind. I don't. But I just believe what he says, based on the fact that he's quoting many other great scientists that know about the facts better than I do. But it all makes sense. That according to the law of relativity, or the theory of relativity, which is now a law, that you could actually pack 14 billion years into six 24-hour periods. Okay, so you can believe that the world is 6,000 years old, meaning man was, right? Okay, anyway, let's go on. So, Kach b'chodshim tziva lana limnos kol chadashim in Nisan. Therefore, all these months that we're now dealing with, the 12 months of the year, sometimes 13 when it's a leap year, like this year. So to all these months, God commanded us to count all the months from Nisan, as we have spoken about. So now look at the verse. When it says, Rishon hu lechodesh, we're talking about the second part. It's Rishon hu lechem, sorry. It's the first to you, avolo lishar umos. But it's not necessarily counted by the nations of the world. They don't have the necessity, they don't have the need for the remembrance of leaving Egypt. They should be cognizant of the idea of the creation of the world. And this all goes according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. It's not so clear that I'm of the opinion that the world was actually created in Nisan, the physical world. Maybe the conception was created in Rosh Hashanah, but the actual birth of the world, because every 28 years we go out and we make a special blessing on a certain day, which is in Nisan, by the way, the exact day that on the fourth day of creation, when the sun and moon were created, that the sun and the moon are in the exact same place on the original fourth day of creation, and it always takes place in Nisan. Now, why would Chazal set us up to make a blessing? We actually make a blessing when we see it first thing in the morning on the creation of the world. So I am of the opinion that we must paskin like the world actually was created in Nisan, like Rabbi Yeshua, but I'm not going to go there right now. Okay, so the Kli Yakar continues and says, Shrichen anu litein tamod. We need to give further insight. Lama hitchil kol ha-mitzvos b'kiddush ha-chodesh. It's similar to the first Rashi we had seen in Genesis 1:1. Why in the world do we need to have the first of all the commandments, this particular commandment of sanctifying the new moon? That's the first question. The next question he asks is very interesting. Lama nismecha mitzvah zu lemitzvahs korban Pesach? Why is this mitzvah, the first mitzvah, connected immediately to the korban Pesach? If what we did not read, we didn't read verse 3. See, verse 3 in chapter 12 says, Speak to the entire assembly of Israel, saying, On the 10th of this month you shall take for themselves each man a lamb or a kid for each father's house, a lamb or a kid for the household, on and on and on, explaining that you're going to take this and slaughter it on the 14th. In the meantime, you take it on the 10th, and you're going to examine it against any blemishes, because you cannot offer up a blemished korban offering, sacrifice, and it's all going to happen on the 10th. So basically, why do you have this connected to Korban Pesach? Habiur al zehu. This is the explanation. Ready for this? According to Wikipedia, we're right on target. Do I have that here? Okay, it's actually number 7 on the source sheet, so we kind of skipped something, but I'll get to it right now. According to the Kliyakar, according to Wikipedia, Sha'amunat HaMitzri'im Hayasa Sha'mazel Tuleh Roe L'Kol HaMitziut. Okay, according to the Egyptians, their faith, their religion, their whatever you want to call it, their idolatry, it was considered the constellation of Aries. What is Aries? Aries is the adult sheep. It's a ram. It's an adult sheep who's roeh lekol hamitziut, who guides all of existence. So let's go to the Wikipedia source number 7. Aries is one of the constellations of the zodiac. It's located in the northern celestial hemisphere between the Pisces to the west and Taurus to the east. The name Aries is Latin for ram. Look at the symbol. It obviously looks like ram horns. In ancient Egyptian astronomy, Aries was associated with the god Amon-Ra. Interesting, we'll talk about that another time. Who was depicted as a man with a ram's head and represented fertility and creativity. Because it was the location of the vernal equinox, it was called the indicator of the reborn sun. Keep this in mind. It was the indicator of the reborn, S-U-N. During the times of the year when Aries was prominent, priests would process statues of Amun-Ra to temples, a practice that was modified later on by Persian astronomers. Aries acquired the title Lord of the Head. Now keep this in mind, okay? Lord of the Head, H-E-A-D in Egypt. Okay, now let's go back to the Kliyakar. It's very important that we understand the history. And he says, he brings down a Gemara in Shabbos, Ki mazo machachi, mazo ma'ashir. Okay, I think I actually brought also a Gemara, or maybe I didn't. Okay, I think I kept it out. The Seder. So basically, there's a whole concept: are the Jews under constellational rule or not? And there's a discussion in the Gemara. The major opinions, it seems like it's almost unanimous, that the Jewish people are not under mazel, meaning the constellations do not affect us, although they do have an effect on the world. Okay, keep that in mind. According to the last thing we just read in the Kliyakar was that the Gemara in Shabbos mentions that different mazalot, different constellations, bestow wisdom or bestow wealth, and on and on. Therefore, I want you to turn to Genesis 46, verse 34. That's number 5 on the source sheet. And you shall say, this verse is when Yosef is counseling his father and his brothers, explaining, they all knew that they did not want to assimilate into Egyptian culture. They all knew that Egyptian culture was corrupt with all kinds of sorcery and witchery and sexual immorality, and they didn't want to assimilate. So they wanted I'm trying to think of the word. They wanted to be more insular. They wanted to ghettoize themselves, which is not a bad thing if you don't want to assimilate. So he advised them, when Pharaoh asks you what you do for a living, tell him you are shepherds, because this is the way to accomplish what we want. We want to be separate from them. How would be telling them you're shepherds put you like far away from them? So look at the verse 46:34. You shall say, your servants have been owners of livestock from our youth until now, both we and our ancestors. And what's the point of Yosef telling him this? So you may dwell in the land of Goshen. And why will that be accomplished? Because all shepherds are abhorrent to the Egyptians. As we just got done saying that the Egyptian god is the sheep. Try to imagine for a second, I've never been to India, but I heard about it, that they allow the cows, the holy cows, to run wild. And if you were a cowboy, I think you would be, abhorrent. What's the idea behind this abhorrency? Because if your God is the shepherd of the world, your God is the head, so who are you to put yourself over him? And it makes sense for the idol worshippers to feel that way. So going back into the Kliyakar, he says like this. After we read the verse, to avat mitzrayim kol ro'ei tzon, that every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. Why? Ki ein nachal lomar shamanhig yeh munhag muzulato ki ro'ahu. It's not proper. It's not fitting to say that the leader himself will have a leader over him, meaning that the leader, the manhig, the roeh, the shepherd, has a shepherd over him. Ki roeh, because he is the shepherd. Therefore, ready for this, you got to be sitting down. That's why God commanded us to slaughter the Pesach. Al kein tzivalan lishchot ha-Pesach. See, background. What is the role of the Jew in this world? To let people know there's one God and there is no other. So yes, it's very nice to profess there is a God, but sometimes you have to stand up and say, you guys are believing in foolishness. You're running down the wrong way, right? We have a mitzvah to return objects to their owners. And Hashem is the koneh, he is the owner, he created us. And we have an obligation not just to profess positively, right, that there is one God, but to help guide and straighten out those who are misled. So God actually commands us to slaughter the Pesach. Why? Lefi shemazot lehu rishon ubachor lekol hamazalot. Because the constellation, the way they looked at it, is that he was the head. He was the first. He was the firstborn of all the constellations. When you look back at the Wikipedia, you can see it so clearly. The Lord of the head. That's the language that we saw in Wikipedia. Al yedei shchita satleh, and us, right? We're partners with God. By us doing his command, we are slaughtering the ram, or in this case, the baby sheep. Now I want you to go to Isaiah chapter 24, verse 21. It shall come to pass on that day that the Lord shall visit punishment upon the host of heavens on high and upon the kings of the earth on the earth. That God himself will take revenge on the celestial bodies, and only afterwards, ready for this? This is a very interesting idea. Just as God slew the firstborn on earth, he was the one involved in killing the firstborn of the Egyptians, while simultaneously we are involved in the mitzvah of slaughtering the tleh, slaughtering the idol of the Egyptians. He, later on, just a few hours later that night, took out the firstborn of Egypt. But what we learned also in the past, that all wars take place in heaven before the actual war on earth. Guys, I want you to shake your heads if you remember that. So to Hashem in Isaiah 24:21, he is Yifchod Hashem al tzva marom b'marom. God will take revengeance on the celestial bodies. And only afterwards it says he will kill the kings on the earth. The kings being in this case, the firstborn. Hine chodesh Nisan hu zman knisas Hashem es b'mazel tleh. I mentioned to you before, when you think of a celestial body, such as a zodiac sign, where would you imagine you would see it in the month that it supposedly has the power? Let's say, for example, this month of the deli, of the bucket, of the pail, right? So you would think the Chodesh Shvat. I would have thought during a full moon you would end up seeing it in the middle of the night sky at midnight. But no, you know when you see it? It's only visible 45 minutes before sunrise, and the reason is because the constellation is actually on the far side of the sun. So listen to the words the Kliyakar says. that, behold, in Chodesh Nisan is the time where the sun enters the constellation. It's the sun that enters the constellation, the S-U-N. And therefore, listen to this, when I tell you before what I think, my view of how the constellations work, we know that the Jew is not under the constellations, but they still have an effect. How does it work? Because it's on the far side of the sun. The sun, let's try to use our imagination, is a huge glowing ball of really a lot of light, but it's a gaseous ball. It's not solid per se. And the constellation light, there is light there, the forces that God created are coming through the sun magnifies it, and the moon on the far side of the earth acts as a reflector, and it will reflect a certain amount of light on the full moon. So the highest, most powerful day of Nisan is on a full moon, but it's on the far side of the sun. We are commanded to make and establish this month as the head of the months of the year, in order in order to always and constantly be cognizant of the fact that we were taken out of Egypt by God's love and His mercy. Now, there is to be concerned somewhat, because people could likely make a mistake and say, you Jews, you also believe in the constellations. Well, let's see. There is a concern because of this mitzvah that it's allowing people to make a mistake and to argue and to think, it must be the chashivut mazot tzleh. It must be because this ram, this Aries, is so important, which functions. That's when it functions in this month. That's why you made it. That's why God made it, because really He gave this power, and you guys are supposed to be following this power and all that. No. That's why God actually told us to slaughter the sheep. Now, I know there's a certain religion that considers, I don't know where they got this from, they actually consider the Passover Lamb their God. I don't know, I don't see anybody smiling, maybe, I don't see all your faces. That's why God, the living God, El Chai, Miyad Lishchot Hatleh, He immediately commanded us to slaughter this sheep, Le'ein Kol Roim, in the eyes of everyone, of the eyes of all the Egyptians. Just imagine this. It was on Shabbat, the 10th day, He told us to go and take them. And we kept them in our bedrooms. He said, time to the bedpost of your, time to your bedpost. You can examine it for 3 days. On the 14th, you're going to slaughter it in the afternoon while it's still daylight. And you're going to roast it. You can't put it in water, If you took a nice piece of meat and put it in water, you put it maybe pot roast in your oven. So who's going to smell it? Only the people sitting in the house. But if you're told to barbecue, to roast this thing, you're talking about, just try to imagine what Israel is like today on, what's that day called? Yom Ha'atzmaut, on Independence Day, when there's barbecues everywhere. They say you got to close your window. You can't even breathe in Yerushalayim. You can't go outside without being in a cloud of smoke. So just imagine, on Erev Pesach, everybody's barbecuing at the same time. Well, here we're talking about in Egypt, that night when we left. In front of everybody. Not only did we slaughter it, but we roasted it. Unbelievable. V'likachto be'esher l'chodesh. As verse 3 says, take it on the, what day? The 10th. How many days does a month have? Has usually 30 days. So we're talking about 1/3 of the month. When you think of the way it's waxing and waning, you know that the 10th of the month is while it's still, I forget which one is which, while it's still on its way up, while it's in its strength. B'shlish Roshon shel chodesh, it's in the first third of the month. Ki az hamazel yoter b'takfu, it's while the mazel, the constellation is more in its strength. And there is no ability for its power, that the mazel, the constellation, the idol of Tleh, of Aries, has no abilities to save itself, to save its flock, which is supposedly under its authority. No! Sorry, bud, you got no power whatsoever. And through us slaughtering and then recognizing that this false god has no power, they will come and to recognize that there is a King of Kings, a God of God, a highest of highs. That there is one Lord over all, and it ain't the Aries. That's why Kiddush HaChodesh, that's why sanctifying the new moon. And not just any moon, but this moon of Nisan came first. Remember we saw Rashi in Genesis 1:1? How would you know when the 10th day was? How would you know when the 14th day? How would you know anything unless you had a first day of the month? So God commanded us, right, to take it on the 10th day. Al kain hutrach lahodiyu me'ez yom yatchil limnos esar yamim elu. Only so that we could know. He told us about Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so we would know what day, the 10th, to take it, and of course on the 14th to slaughter. By saying to us, Kazer re'eh v'kadesh, when you see this is what you sanctify. When you see this new moon, this is what you're going to sanctify. Min oto yom va'ala, and from that day forward, Yiboneh Asar Yomim Elu, you count the 10 days. Lodia chushat bachur hamazalot, to inform the world. This is what the Jewish job is to do, to inform the world of the weakness of the firstborn or head of the year constellation called Aries. Nope. Ubelikoto yilku kol bochrei Mitzrayim. And that, ready for this? This is the whole, while the lamb Aries is being slaughtered by us, so too the firstborn of Egypt will be slaughtered simultaneously by Hashem, Asher Samu Kislam Bikur Hamazalos, whom the Egyptians place their foolishness into the firstborn of the constellations. And this is the reason why this mitzvah was given to them, to be involved. There's certain involvement. God wants our involvement. Listen to this. Zeh tam lama shamasur lehem mitzvahs lizasek behem. You know which mitzvahs God wants us to do so we could merit to leave Egypt? The dam of Pesach and the dam of Milah. Yes, blood is important. The blood of the Pesach offering and the blood of the circumcision. He wanted our involvement. And the way the Medrash explains it is that there was something necessary for us to earn to be redeemed. Now, think about this, a little bit crazy, because we have discussed this idea that Yosef already told the brothers what they need to do so they would be redeemed in the future. Keep the Hebrew language, don't change your names, right? Don't speak Lashon Hara, don't become involved in sexual immorality. And we already learned, because of these 4 things, the Jews merited to leave Egypt. So how does a Medrash come and tell us that there were 2 drops of blood, 2 concepts of blood that were necessary for us to be involved in order to be redeemed? Listen to this. I'm going to read that line again. V'zeh tam. This is going to be the reason why Hashem handed over, gave us the mitzvahs to be involved with. Which mitzvahs are those? The Pesach and the circumcision. Ki dam Pesach, because what did we already explain about the blood of Passover? Hainu levatel da'at hama'aminin b'mazel tleh. In order to negate, in order to go against, in order to nullify those people that think, to get rid of the idea of believing in these constellations, especially the constellation of Aries. Well, what about Milah? What did you need the blood for circumcision? Because you know what it says by Pesach? It says you can't eat the Pesach if you're not circumcised. So it's kind of like a hachana. It's preparation. You have to have gotten rid of, stripped yourself from the klipot, from the obstacles that keep you from reaching the spiritual heights. And comes Reb Masya ben Charash, and he would darshan out, and he said, this is the medrash that really contradicts the 4 things that we learned earlier in the year about what was it that the Jews did to merit leaving Egypt, because we were not on great spiritual heights. It says we didn't have mitzvahs to actually be involved. I want you to concentrate on the word lehisasek, to actually be involved. And there's a big question, which is the question I think I verbalized already. Hello, Amru, didn't Chazal already tell us in Vayikra Rabbah, Biskut Arba Devarim Nigalo Avasedi Mitzrayim, on account of the merit of 4 things our forefathers were redeemed from Egypt? Biskut Shloshinu Shmam, in the merit they didn't change their names, Lushanam, nor their language, Hayu Gedorim Me'arayos, and they kept themselves from sexual immorality, Lo Yevehen De Laktaron, and they didn't speak Lashon Hara, they didn't turn over any Jews to the authorities, nor did they reveal the secret of the 9th plague. Early on, they already knew, close to a year before, that they were going to ask the Egyptians for all their gold. And another question, what about the actual language, lehis asek, to be involved? Why did we need to be involved in any of them? Didn't we already have these 4 things, and we called them mitzvahs? It could have said, not the word lehis asek, involved, just use the word mitzvahs. It could have said they didn't have in their hands mitzvahs to merit, to be redeemed. So he's going to tell us the difference between the word mitzvah they could have been involved with versus the word lehisasek behem, to be involved. What is the difference? So we're going to hear. Shagam Rabbi Masya Soiver, even Rabbi Masya held. Shayu biyadam arbim mitzvah. Rabbi Masya knew about these 4 things that the Jews kept while they were in Egypt. So, and Amnam Osa Mitzvahs Haim. Okay, the thing is like this. There's going to be a difference. There's different types of mitzvahs. We know in English we call them positive mitzvahs versus negative mitzvahs, right? And we say all the time, that's not a good translation. There's do's and there's don'ts. So the do's are positive actions one does, and the don'ts are refraining from doing something. But in Hebrew, we're going to call them shev va'al ta'aseh. The negatives, the don'ts, are sit and do nothing. Whereas, okay, that means it's very passive. What was required and was what seemed to be necessary were us to be involved in mitzvahs, to be involved, the actual involvement, which we call kum va'aseh, get up and do. You actually have to do something. So Chazal tell us, and this is well known, mitzvah bi'idana da'asek bo magina u'matzla. That is Yiddish. When I say Yiddish, I mean Aramaic. That while one is involved, actually involved in a mitzvah, there is a very special protection and salvation that is taking place. Now, do I get credit right now for not murdering anyone? Of course not. Do I have the feeling to murder? No. But if I did, then maybe I'd get reward. So how much reward am I getting for fulfilling all of the negatives, all of the don'ts? Not a whole lot, unless I actually had an urge. But what about the positive mitzvahs? How am I going to get reward for a positive mitzvah? I actually have to do something. So it's very nice that in Egypt we did not change our names, right? We kept our language. There was no change. It's called status quo. There's no inertia, right? Well, whatever you want to call it. There's no movement. So, and not speaking Lashon Hara, unless you had the urge. So here too, you're talking about the difference between a shev va'al ta'aseh and a kum va'aseh. And I think I outlined that for you, if you look at number 10. If you want to look it up, you can go to Torah for Thinkers at WordPress and get a better idea. Okay? Now, that just explains a little bit more. So here, we needed it. The Kanu Trikin Gam Kain Hatzalah. When we were in Egypt, we needed salvation. Shalolitein Hamashkis Lavo Abateim. We did not want, and God would not allow, if we did what we needed to do with the Dam Pesach and the blood of circumcision, which was a preparation, because you couldn't eat the Pesach if you weren't circumcised, that would allow, that God would not allow the destructive forces into our houses, as he did in the homes of the Egyptians. And therefore it was required, it was necessary for us to be involved in the Pesach offering as well as the Milah, to actually be involved. Levatel amuna mazel taleh, to get rid of, to negate, to nullify this belief in Aries, in the constellations. As Rashi also says, now look at the last verse on number 11 in the source sheet. It's Exodus chapter 12, verse 21. When Moses actually tells them what to do, he says, draw forth. I know we can't rely on the English, but we'll use it anyway. Draw forth, what you think means draw towards yourself, or buy for yourself sheep and your families, and slaughter the Passover sacrifice. So Rashi says the word mishchu, which means draw forth, at least it doesn't really mean that. It means draw. But draw what? Draw yedeichem me'avodah zarah. Draw yourselves away from idol worship. Ukachu, and the word, and buy or take, lechem, for yourselves, son shel mitzvah. In other words, we know this idea of turn away from evil. Does anybody know the rest of the verse? And do good. It's not enough to turn, right? I think there's an expression, right? I forget how it goes. Something about, if all you do is turn away from evil, that doesn't make you righteous, right? There's this concept like good men, that's not enough. To be a good person, you actually have to do good. So, yes, that's the first part. It's like almost a prerequisite, right? Turn away from the idols, get away from evil, stop acting, negatively, right? Turn away from your evil ways. That's a great start. Believe me, that's a great start. But there's a follow-up. Also, then do good, right? Take it. So draw yourselves away and take the mitzvah into your hand. Okay, with that, I want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom.
Shama shir shir chadam